There is a street in my town. Nobody really remembers its name, as they all just call it the Street of Shadows. There are lots of rumors about how it earned its name. Some say the shadow of a person gains sentience and attacks the person. Some say you turn into a shadow if you go there. Some even say it's the path to the shadow realm, whatever that means. The street is pretty normal during the day, sure, people avoid it because of the rumors, but kids my age use that street all the time. They do say that they spot something moving once in a while, but it's pretty harmless. The only time that street is avoided by everyone is at night, as nobody who has ever dared to go there at night has ever been found again. Late introduction, but I'm Elijah, a high school student. For my project this year, I'm researching the Street of Shadows. I have gathered all that information on the street, but something seems to be missing. With no concrete evidence, this project is as good as a conspiracy theory, so I decided to go to the street myself. Now, obviously, I'm not dumb enough to do it alone, so I got my bestie Noah with me. I grabbed my camera and went to meet Noah on the street at 5:30 p.m. When I reached there, he was already waiting for me. "Took you forever," he said to me. "I had to get the camera ready and all," I replied. "Just so you know, I'm only doing this so that you put my name on the project as well. If anything happens, I'm leaving you behind and running," he said in a sarcastic tone. I laughed and then signaled him to follow me. We went inside the street. It was empty. Nobody really wanted to be there any time near the sunset, which was in another 30 minutes. I started recording the place. The street was long. There were mostly houses which looked like they had been abandoned for decades. There were vines growing on the fences. The wild ones that grow in a garden isn't looked after. We went deeper into the street. There wasn't much change in the scenery, except the end of the street was getting closer. At the end of the street, there was just a wall. It used to be a residential street before, so it didn't lead anywhere. I never found out when the street became abandoned in my research, so it must have been long back. Noah suddenly grabbed me and pointed towards one of the houses. His hands were shaking, and he pointed towards a window in one of the houses. "There's something there," he said. His voice was shaking as well. I looked at the window, but I could only see the darkness. The house was abandoned for who knows how long, so it was unlikely that there was anyone there. "I don't see anything there. You probably just imagined it," I said to him. But... "You're right. Sorry about that," he replied. "It's almost sunset. Let's sit down," I said, pointing to a nearby bench. The bench was clean, unlike everything else on the street. It was probably brought by one of the other kids. We sat down and waited for the sun to set. About 40 minutes later at 6:30, it was fully dark. "So now what?" Noah asked me. Well, I didn't really think what to do after it's dark. I hoped that if anything was there, then it'll show itself as soon as it gets dark. "Let's just record this place and leave," I replied. "But what about our project?" he asked. "Well, we'll just say we busted the myth," I replied. We started walking back. I recorded everything on the way. It was all the same except much creepier than before. We were halfway through the street when we suddenly heard something break behind us. We turned around and saw that the bench we were sitting on had been broken in 2 parts. I took a step back, trying to comprehend what was going on. That's when suddenly something emerged from the shadows and started moving towards us. It started getting closer, and I was barely able to make out what it was. It was a woman. She was wearing a black gown. Her hair was long, which reached to her knees, and it covered the upper part of her face. She was getting closer to us. I was able to make out a little more detail. Her unexposed face had no skin, and just flesh. It was covered in blood. Her hands had long nails, which had blood and pieces of flesh stuck in them. I was frozen in fear. I couldn't move as she slowly walked towards us. Noah suddenly grabbed me and yelled, "Run, dumbass!" I finally snapped out of it and started running. The woman started screaming and chased after us. She was getting awfully close. She was so much faster than us. I quickly turned on the flash on my camera and threw it at the woman. It hit her and flashed on her face, blinding her for a few seconds, which gave us enough time to get out of there. We quickly ran to my house and into my room. We were both gasping for air. It's not every day you run for your life. We finally calmed down after a few minutes. Good thinking about throwing the camera. But we no longer have the footage, so it was all for nothing, Noah said with a disappointed tone. Think again, I said, as I held up the memory card I took out before throwing the camera. I transferred the footage from the memory card to my laptop. The second half of the footage was mostly us running, and didn't capture the woman. I think I saw something in one of those houses. Turn up the brightness and look, Noah said to me. I turned up the brightness and looked through the first half of the footage. What was in there left me and Noah even more frightened than before. All the houses had a skeleton hanging by a rope in the darkness, but not just normal skeletons. Skeletons covered in a brown dried blood, almost as if somebody had taken off the flesh from a dead body and the remaining blood dried up on the skeleton. We reached the part where Noah had pointed to the house. There was the woman at the window pointing towards the rope and smiling with her blood-covered mouth at the camera.